Hi everyone, not sure what was the issue prior to that. Let me see once Sir joins, and then if it would be fine, we'll continue. Otherwise, shall we may start it from Sir's handle. Allow us 1 minute, please. Meanwhile, you can confirm. I think it should be fine now. Is it better, sir?
Hey, hey, Prince, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, properly, sir. Apologies
Excellent.
for the
No, excellent.
con-
That's fine.
So, sir,
Yeah.
yeah, let's first take that question wherein the comparison of CDMO was done to IT way back in late 90s or early 2000. So, to start with, I think that would be the opening question, and then I have a set of 14, 15 questions wherein we try to address most of them, and if any question would be irrelevant in the sense we don't want to talk, we can surely pass that. Please, over to you, sir.
Sure, sure. Thank you, Prince. So hello, friends. Wish you all a very happy Deepavali and a better year ahead. Um, before we start, I must call out that if you want to lose money, then keep your horizon less than 3 years and blindly follow me. That's a very perfect and proven formula. So less than 3 years of investing horizon, and you blindly follow me, you're likely to lose money. Um, Of course, you may invert this and have a horizon longer than 3 years and invest time and energy in fact finding rather than following the stock tip or discussions verbatim, right? And that said, we can jump to today's topic of wild versus mild randomness. So before we come to that IT versus CDMO comparison, let me give you a broad perspective on what randomness is all about because the word is used in many different contexts, right? So in my context, or the way that I've explained this in the book as well, randomness is a sibling of unpredictability, unknowable, and volatile future. So all these are kind of synonymous to each other and kind of almost sibling. So unpredictable, unknowable, volatile future. That's what the randomness that I'm alluding to is all about. And I will explain the flavors of randomness with real world industry examples. Um, and I'm only focusing on the business economics and not the valuation of these examples. So bear that in mind. It's only to help you understand the different flavors of randomness, mild versus wild and anything in between them, because, these are the two extremes and there are a lot of possibilities in between mild versus wild randomness. So we can now jump to this. So I kind of almost challenged one of the tweets that I saw this morning where I was tagged and I saw someone um, comparing CDMO with the IT industry of 1990s, and I found it slightly disturbing to be perfectly honest, because when it comes to the economics of the industry, IT services is very different from CDMOs or innovator synthesis services. Um, those who are from IT industry probably understand, what a product development life cycle looks like in IT, or what a, a programming project where you are building a custom application from scratch, right from the requirement solicitation to the design and the development, that is the coding phase, the unit testing, and then the integration testing, and finally the deployment and the implementation. That's the kind of a typical life cycle of a software development life cycle that we follow in the IT industry. And on the product development side, um, the IT supply chain partner makes most money during the product development phase. So let's say Microsoft is the innovator on the IT side, and they kind of hire a partner, let's say in India, to develop a new thing. And I'm calling this as a thing because presumably this doesn't exist. Microsoft is trying to create something new, right? So in Peter Thiel's book, Zero to One, right? So Microsoft is trying to create a vertical success, something new that doesn't exist today. They hire a partner in India, a team of let's say 100 people somewhere in Bangalore or Hyderabad or wherever, right? And they start developing this new quote unquote thing. And so Microsoft is the innovator here. Majority of the cash burn and the investment from the Microsoft perspective will happen during the product development phase, which may last 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year, who knows, right? So the timeline is also not strictly predictable here in case of the new product that Microsoft is about to or aiming to let's say discover. But majority of the cash burn will happen during the product development phase itself, and far less money will be made by the partner in India after the product goes commercial. So after the product is successful, um, far less amount of money because there is nothing else to do other than maybe just do some bug fixing and the ongoing maintenance of that product. So on a scale of, let's say, if you spend $100 million in developing the product, maybe you may be spending less than 5 million, um, or maybe just 1 million, or maybe less, depending upon if there were no bugs that were identified during after the commercial launch of that product. Customers are happy, your innovator, i.e. the Microsoft, is happy with the way the product has shaped up. There is no further work that is left to do on that product. So that's the typical IT product development life cycle, and an IT software development life cycle is similar, though um, if you cut across these different phases, most of the cash burn and the gain from the supplier perspective. So while the innovator or the Microsoft is burning cash, the supplier or the partner in offshore or India or elsewhere is billing that and making majority of the cash flow during that phase. And when the product is live, almost negligible cash flow is realized. In the CDMO, it's the opposite, or nearly opposite. Far less money is made during the development phase, which is uh, which is risky and unpredictable, and significant amount of money is made when the product is commercial and the product is successful. So it's kind of diagonally opposite to IT. That's one difference. The other difference is in the IT industry, the boom of the 90s and the early 2000s that most people recall, there was no USFDA. There was no regulatory challenge. It was a wide open field. Any Tom, Dick, or Harry could have started an IT services company, and they could have made tons of money. That's not the case with CDMO. The CDMO industry is heavily regulated. You have to have USFDA's blessings and EMA's blessings and PMDA Japan's blessing, depending upon which geography you are targeting, in pretty much anything you do. Right? So that's another big difference. So the risk reward and the economics of these two sectors are completely different. So anywhere you find anyone comparing IT industry with CDMO, just stand up and challenge them. So that's one. Uh, any questions or clarifications that anyone needs on this subject? Very quickly, I'm happy to for you to be added as a speaker, and I'm happy to listen to you. Otherwise, I'll move on.
We'll check. Meanwhile, sir, let's move on to next question, which is around like.
So hang on. So before we jump to the questions, Prince, I would like to just give few examples of mild versus wild randomness, right? So if I stick within the CDMO industry, so drug discovery has got wild randomness, because in phase one the success rate is far lower than phase three. Phase two, the success rate is only 28%. So of every 100 molecules that enter phase one, only eight, give or take, will go commercial. But if those 100 molecules are oncology related, that success rate could jump from 8% to almost double, something like 15%. So oncology has a far higher success rate compared to the normal success rate of every 100 molecules in phase one, only 8 will see commercial success. And that's only clinical success that we are talking about. Even if the molecule is clinically successful, the commercial success may or may not happen. So there are almost two big random events. One is you get the clinical success from phase one to commercial. That's a very rare event because of every 100 molecules, 92 will fail. So you will get zero. And even on those 8 rare successful molecules, not all will find commercial success. So put these two together, the probability of getting a blockbuster like Car XT that Bristol Myers Squibb and Newland got recently, that's an extremistan. That's a very, 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 very rare scenario, right? So that's a very wild randomness. And within if we speak within companies, even within the companies that are operating within the discovery phase. So if I take Jubilant Pharma CRDMO business, their drug discovery business in the recent quarter grew by 32%, versus Syngene's drug discovery business, which was flat on a console basis if I'm comparing the results that Syngene declared in Q2. So even within the companies or between them, there will be variances in terms of, the industry may be structurally positive, but not every company will likely do well, or not do well in the timeline that we are comparing. So that's on the discovery side. Then on the development, again, as I said, the randomness is subjective. If you are in phase one of the development phase, it's highly random because only 8% success rate. If you are in phase three, maybe 55 to 60% success rate. If you are in late phase three, you are kind of almost 75, 80% probability of finding the clinical success, not the commercial success, the clinical success at least. So that also is very subjective. Commercial manufacturing of CDMO is a completely different ball game. Once when the molecule has been successfully accepted and approved by the regulators and it's commercial, the clinical randomness is gone. Now comes the commercial randomness, that how big this molecule can become, how quickly can this scale up, how big that this molecule can become. And typically any new commercial launch will take few years to completely ramp up. When I say few years, I mean it could be 3 years, it could be 4 years, it could be even 5 years. That's the kind of a typical time frame it takes from the day you launch it commercially to getting the peak realization from that indication. Of course, the innovator can add new indications on the same molecule, and then the cash flows can be cumulative cash flows can be materially bigger if all those indications are successful. But let's take one molecule, one indication example in the commercial launch. Um, and the peak potential is realized after 3, 4, 5 years. But commercial manufacturing, the randomness is milder compared to the drug discovery and development. And take another example of new technology and new application. Again, very wide randomness. So oral insulin, many including Biocon have been chasing this elusive goal over the last 15, 20 years. And, crores of cash Biocon spent on this and many other researches. And if you look at from a shareholder perspective, what the shareholders got, they have only got 10% stake in Bicara Therapeutics, which is listed in the US. Market cap of Bicara is, off the top of my head, about 1 billion USD. So that 10% stake of Biocon is just 100 million, right? So this, I mean, from a return on capital employed perspective, this is nothing. This is peanuts, right? And so that's one example. Again, if I take another industry of hospitals and diagnostics, that's mild randomness. See, the disease pool and the patient burden will not change. So this is not like discovering a new molecule. Um, So that's not wide. Hospital or diagnostic business is offering mild randomness. Same as FMCG, like a Tata Consumer or a Pidilite, right? That randomness is mild. You may make more money in one quarter or versus the previous one or the previous year, but it's not zero or one. Whereas in drug discovery, it's zero or one. You will either be successful or you will fail. So that's wild versus mild randomness when it comes to hospitals, diagnostics, consumer industry, branded consumer in general. And autos again is subjective. Uh, Speaking about autos, I think only shallow cyclicality and almost certain demand sectors will have mild randomness. So autos will also have mm, greater than mild, but definitely less than wild. So autos offer higher cyclicality compared to something like a Tata Consumer or a Nestle, but it's far lower volatility compared to a Wockhardt or a Biocon trying to discover a new drug. Right? So that's another flavor of the randomness. If I take another example outside of healthcare and pharma, so if I take um, oil and gas industry as an example, there is a company called Deep Industries, right? Deep Industries is a supplier of or it participates in the supply chain of oil and gas industry. And again, there the randomness is tending towards wild because you may or may not discover oil and gas even after searching for it for many years. So the randomness is wild there. If I take branded generics as an example, something like RBG Life Sciences or Jackson Powell or JB Chemical or Ajanta or any other company for that matter, branded and non-discretionary spending is linked to some sort of a very shallow cyclicality or mild randomness. So a successful portfolio should have majority of allocation in mild randomness and very small allocation in wild randomness. People often do the opposite. They will take a very high bet in areas that offer wild randomness, and they will allocate smaller amounts in areas that offer almost no or very mild kind of randomness. A perfect strategy, a balanced portfolio is one where you allocate more into areas where the fluctuation, the volatility, and the unpredictability is lower, and maybe you allocate a smaller amount in areas where the downside may be limited, but if the probability of winning a huge um, jackpot is also very, very small. Um, so you kind of cap your downside and you leave your upside wide open. So I think a balanced portfolio will have flavors of both the wild and the mild randomness. Maybe an 80-20 rule where 80% should be geared towards mild randomness. So discretionary consumption, things that offer shallow cyclicality, branded consumer businesses, um, branded hospitals, branded pharma, that kind of a space will have shallow cyclicality, stroke, mild randomness, versus a new drug discovery business where a molecule will most likely fail and very few successes will happen at the clinical stage. And even if you are successful at the clinical stage, you may or may not find immense success 3, 4, 5 years out when the molecule has been commercial and live. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, sir. There is a follow-up question to the opening note. So basically, he's asking using Keytruda or similar big drugs as an example. Can you please explain how it affects the involved CDMO player before and after it goes off patent? Can the involved CDMO player start selling it directly in the market with a slight tweak in the formula?
So again, it depends. There are many different permutations, combinations of scenarios possible here. So imagine a 10 billion drug at the patent or the brand level that goes off patent, and there are 10 different suppliers of that molecule, the generic molecule, on day one. The price crash should be as high as 95 to 97%, right? So there is hardly any market value left if you just take the brand value. But then what happens with the generic companies is they will expand the market because a lot of population that was finding it unaffordable to buy that branded drug will now find it affordable to buy the generic molecule. So the number of people or the number of consumers will expand. The price collapse will be 95%, but the volume may become 10x, 20x, 30x, 40x, because the innovator may not be selling that drug in Africa, they may not be selling that drug in Asia or some of the poorer economies, and the generic company may start targeting those economies. So although the price crash would be there, as long as the off patent process is robust, efficient, the generic company could still make money. The innovator may not be interested in continuing that molecule, and in that case, if the CDMO is having a generic division, something like Newland or Lorus Labs, they may be interested in pursuing an off-patent version of that molecule, and they may not be interested in. So again, that depends on the economics of that specific molecule. And for any molecule, I think the margins and the pricing power and the economics works on a combination of three factors almost. It's like what molecule you have, which geography you are selling that molecule, and what is your end customer. So a blue sky scenario, your molecule is an NCE, that's a non-patent molecule. You are in the geography of US, and your customer is an innovator. There is no pressing pressure. As long as the molecule is patent protected, you'll make tons and tons of money. Innovator will make tons and tons of money, and because your API or the ingredient is a very small percentage of the innovator's overall cost, so the majority of the cost for innovator is their own branding and marketing expenses. The drug ingredient or the API is just 2%, 1% to 3% of their overall cost. So innovator is not interested in haggling, because even if they get a better price, it will not change their overall cost economics at an innovator level, because majority of their cost is coming from branding and distribution. So that's the blue sky scenario. The other end of this is the molecule is off patent, geography is, let's say, India or Africa for that matter, and your customer is another generic company. Then there won't be any pressing power, almost none, and it may become a bloodbath kind of a scenario. So those are the two kind of extremes of um, the equations when it comes to the margins or the pricing pressure.
Right. So another question is, sir, he's asking FDI approval when no manufacturing has started in comparison to the FDI audit when the production or manufacturing is ongoing. So the person is asking about the comparison on the easiness of which approval is easy and which is tougher, or it's not a right comparison.
Again, it's subjective. It depends. So, approval, is it a sterile approval or an oral approval? Sterile is much more stringent. So, biologics are all sterile. And so sterile approval is much more stringent, even pre-production as well as during production. The only difference between pre-production and post or during production, so once you have been making that molecule for 3, 4, 5 years, the USFDA comes again for a second visit. The only difference is you now need to produce the evidence or the data for that production batch after batch after batch after batch, and USFDA can go through all the records and make sure that you have kept your house in order. In the pre-production, USFDA is looking at your past record for other production batches or other products. So it's kind of a judgment that USFDA would make, that your compliance record has been clean, you have not been cutting corners previously, so it's likely that you will continue with the same conduct. Uh, and they will give you a zero observation kind of a pass. And many companies, so Solara as an example, recently got a zero observation audit. Even Laura's got a zero observation audit on a pretty large capacity. Newland is another one. Hial has got zero observations in some of the recent audits. FDC also got that. So there are many companies that have a clean regulatory track record, compared to something like a Biocon as an example, or some of the large Indian players. They keep tripping over USFDA challenges, and it's partly because of their own wrongdoings, because Malaysia, Biocon in particular is finding it difficult to keep compliance in check, but also because of the fact that the sterility or the biologics are, because they are sterile, the 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 expectation from FDA is much more stringent there versus an oral, because oral you are consuming the tablet, it's going into your stomach, and that's less of a risk versus, if you're taking an injection directly into your bloodstream. So USFDA is much more stringent on sterile manufacturing. So 0483 observation for sterile is a big achievement versus a 0483 observation for an oral inspection, if that makes sense.
So another question is, sir, how much we can take the guidance of the management at its face value when the business is lumpy, for example, CDMO heavy? How, in such cases, we can assess the revenue potential of that particular company?
So again, nobody knows the future in CDMO because of the examples that I gave earlier, right? It's the randomness is so wild. I mean, no management can give you any sort of indication that, so let's say a company has got 100 projects in phase one, and currently there are no commercial. And the management will not be able to give you any guidance, how long will it take for the molecules to progress from phase one to commercial, how many will be successful. We know the average is 8%, right? And so conservative guidance is typically a good sense. It's common sense to stay conservative and let the numbers speak when they come. So there is no point in giving an inflated guidance and then not following it up with an execution, because ultimately the shareholders will, over a 10-year cycle, the shareholders will make as much as the company makes from a cash flow perspective. The guidance will not um, result in a 100 bagger or a 50 bagger, right? It's the execution that will make this stock go up. Newland today is a 200 or 300 bagger over the 20 years, adjusted for all the rights issues, not because of any guidance or lack of guidance. It's because they have executed and we can see the earnings. So again, it's just the earnings, earnings, and earnings.
Right, sir. Another question is what reasonable expectations we can have from Copran's management for the next 3 years, and potential impact on business operations and growth strategy if they fail to obtain environmental clearance for the new factory.
So this environmental clearance has been pending for last 3 years or thereabout. They recently got the approval from the center. I think the state approval is still pending, and the last update was that they hope to get it sometime around September, October from the states. The center is already done. I mean, I it's difficult to guess because it's unpredictability. So my expectation is that I expect an all-time high EBITDA this fiscal year ending March. Previous high in EBITDA for Copran was, off the top of my head, close to 90 crores. I think it was 87 crores, if I'm not mistaken, about 2, 3 years ago. So I expect that 87 crore to be breached. It may be 88 crore, it may be 95 crore, I don't know. But I expect an all-time high in the EBITDA. But majority of that will come towards the back end, i.e. the fourth quarter of the current fiscal, and from that point onwards. So Q4 of FY25 and then going into FY26, that's where the earnings traction is likely to revive for Copran on the assumption that the Panoli plant will get the state approval as well, and then they start ramping up the production. If that fails, then the earnings will take longer to revive, because the nature of the business is such that there are pre-production losses that they are facing in Panoli. So whatever margins that we are seeing in Copran includes those negative pre-production expenses coming from Panoli. So despite all that pain, they are able to produce 14-15% EBITDA margin, which I think is commendable. If Panoli is all ramped up, then the margins will be much more healthy. But uh, I think the earliest sign of that could be in fourth quarter of this fiscal.
Right, sir. So another question is like, yeah. So your views on generic API prices as per Aarti Drugs Q2 con call, API prices are bottomed out. So can we assume Solara's and Copran's margin will improve going forward?
So again, as I said, the margin or the pricing pressure is a function of which molecule, which geography, and which customer. So, Aarti drug may say X and it doesn't impact another company. Or another company may be having, a great time, sunny day, and Aarti industry may be having a rainy day scenario. So it's because there are thousands and thousands of molecules. And the economics is always remember this is very simple to remember which molecule, which geography, and which customer. And I gave that example early on. So again, whatever RT drugs are saying, it may be relevant for one or two or three molecules, but not for the whole portfolio. Again, says the same thing. Uh, I may be making 100 bagger in one or two stocks, but am I making 100 bagger at a portfolio or an aggregate level? The answer is no. But I'm reporting at an aggregate level. So again, it depends. But the pricing pressure is a given in generic industry because it's a highly competitive industry. Every company is trying to innovate, every company is trying to introduce a new process for this off-patent molecule, and they want to be more efficient, low cost, so that they get the best out of that molecule. So it's an ongoing, it's a kind of a treadmill. If you stop investing, if you stop researching and innovation in the generic industry, it's game over for you.
Right. So one question is, what is one thing that could most likely go wrong from here on each of Hial, Solara, Copran, Lorus, etc.? Any one common thing is asking.
And one common thing is USFDA or any regulatory non-compliance. So if that's one risk. Any pharmaceutical company can be penalized and um, have problems on the regulatory aspect because it's a heavily regulated industry. The other could be, if an IP leak were to happen, right? So, if you start stealing the innovator's intellectual property and you start misusing that intellectual property, that's a big risk for any CDMO partner. Competition again, if you stop investing in your capability, if you stop investing in your capacity, that's another risk because yes, you can improve your current year EPS. So if I stop investing, if I stop hiring scientists, I'm reducing my cost. If I'm reducing my cost, I'm inflating my EPS. But that's a near-term gain. I will pay a very heavy price 5, 7, 8 years down. So there are multitude of risks. The only thing is the management should be competent, ethical, honest. They should have an execution track record, and they should be willing to invest in not just capacity but also capability. So hiring more scientists, incrementally adding new technologies, and so on. That's the only formula for longer term success.
Another question is on the result of Narayan Hrudayalaya. So assessment of the current result and any view for next 12 to 18 months, if
Again, I'm not the
any.
person, as I said, less than 3 year horizon. I'm not the person to give you. So I think you better consult a chartist or a technical analyst if your horizon is less than 3 years. And the results of Narayana, I think if I look at it, I think the bottom line was lower or muted. At an EBITDA level, they have not done bad. But again, it's a all ramped up business. The fresh capacities are, that have recently gone live. There is an incremental cost in the system, and all that is perhaps not yielding, or it's not optimally utilized, and that's the reason the bottom line was a bit more muted this time around. Um, if I am looking to deploy fresh capital, will I be investing? Will I be jumping to invest fresh money into Narayana Rudale or any hospital for that matter at today's valuations? Probably not. A dip of whatever 15-20% from current levels, I think they will become much more valuable and acceptable. Again, 20% down, if you have a horizon of greater than 3 years, then perhaps yes. But for in general, I'm talking about not just for Narayana, but I think the results um, were not very uh, positive, but I'm not sure if anyone was expecting a gangbuster number from Narayana.
All right, sir. Another question is on DMCC is asking how to assess the management which is ultra conservative and not growth hungry, not growth hungry. So in such cases, how one should go assessing these kind of
Yes, so
businesses?
I think Newland was not a growth hungry management in 2022. You can pick any of the transcripts, you can pick the P&L statement, and you would have realized, and most of the people missed Newland because they realized and they were convinced that this management is not growth hungry. And because the numbers were not there, the narrative was muted, they were not giving any guidance. I think that's a kind of a sensible management. See, whether it's Newland or DMCC, most of these businesses, they are pull businesses on the specialty side particularly. And incrementally, in case of DMCC, their commodity, which is sulfuric acid, will get captively consumed. So they take sulfuric acid as the ingredient or the input to turn into specialty, and that's their ultimate objective to increase their gross and operating margins as we go along. They have publicly stated that they are aiming for 30% EBITDA in all the new initiatives or new molecules that they are either developing or they are about to launch. Management is sensible. They have responsible chemistry mindset. Renewable power is what they mostly consume. Grid power is very small component of their overall power consumption. Very low employee attrition, which was surprising to me, to be perfectly honest, because I joined their recent earnings call, and yeah, I interacted with them recently, just a couple of days back. So overall, the signs are very healthy. But again, as I said, it's a pull business. Only when the customers start pulling and the new launches start scaling up, we will see the numbers.
So it's about Solara this time. So Solara results were in line. Vizag facility has increased opportunity on CRAMS, high potent APIs, and to meet increased demand of polymer-based APIs. So basis five, yeah, FY26 and beyond, what is the opportunity in API and polymer-based API in case of Solara?
So opportunity is huge. There is absolutely no doubt about that. I mean, if they execute well, Solara could be a 15,000, 20,000 crore market cap company easily. I've got no doubt about that. The, the question mark or the randomness or the unpredictability is on the execution side. And they have been walking the talk in the last 2, 3 quarters. So Arun Kumar as a leader has significantly underperformed since the Agila transaction, and he has taken a much more active ownership role in the group companies, right? Solara and otherwise. And probably it's time he would mean revert, which is good news for group companies in general, right? So we know Arun Kumar has got immense potential, and in a sector with a tailwind, a leader like Arun Kumar should create some magic, and that's what shareholders are hoping for. Um, Q2 results, I think, were slightly better than my own expectations, if I'm completely honest. I think Q3 onwards, they should start reporting year-over-year growth. Q3 has got a very low base anyway, so Q3 should not be a problem. But even Q4, YOY basis, Solara should be reporting growth, and then FY26 should also report year-over-year growth. So again, opportunity in polymer chemistry, in high potent chemistry is immense, huge. A company reporting mid-teens margin when their largest capacity is negative. So they are bleeding money in Vizag. Despite that fact, if a company is reporting healthy mid-teens margins, I mean, when Vizag is fully ramped up, all commercial, the margins can very easily be 25% at an EBITDA level. But that won't happen in a jiffy. So again, it's a game of patience, right? 3 years is the minimum, as I keep saying, for any of the investment. So if someone has got that kind of a time frame, then I think this potential is there. But we have to track these businesses very closely on a quarter-on-quarter basis, because what I say today may be all null and void if a USFDA non-compliance action were to happen. Although in case of Solara, they have recently cleared all the USFDA audits, so that should not be a risk. I think it's just a matter of time here.
So, sir, one question around this is like this basket as a whole for say 4 or 5 companies which cater to all these. Would it be wise to go in a SIP mode for because saying 3 years at once is easy, but majority of the investors doesn't have that kind of patience as we normally see in the market parlance. But again, if we take a basket approach, club it with SIP, would it be a wise decision so as to mitigate the risk of single company and
100%, 100%. And see, Charlie Munger and many others have said that many times that big money is not in buying and selling. Buying and selling gives you the dopamine kick, instant kick, but big money is in waiting. And people have made serious money by staying invested for 10 years, 15 years, and longer. So SIP, I think, is the right strategy. Again, I don't know. Every individual is different. Your mindset is different. So what works for me may not work for you, will not work for you. So I'll tell you what typically would be my strategy. So if I were to advise my younger self, that I would say you create a basket of at least six, and I tweeted that the other day as well. So at least six companies, because CDMO is got so much randomness. Have a basket of six companies, and then let's say on a monthly basis, if you can go up to 10 rupees a month. So on a monthly SIP, the maximum you could stretch your budget is 10 rupees. In the current market scenario, you invest, let's say, 4 rupees or 3 rupees. And if market corrects 5-10%, you increase that SIP allocation from 3 to 4 or 5. If there is a sudden crash in Nifty, something like a COVID kind of a scenario, you go all the way to 10 because that's your maximum. You cannot go up beyond 10, but you only go to 10 when there is extreme pessimism or there is a fear in the market. Then you go max out. If there is a FOMO building up or early signs of FOMO, or you don't find valuations attractive, then for God's sake, don't stop SIP because it's a bad habit. So reduce your SIP, but don't stop it, and increase SIP on a monthly basis when the correction happens or the valuations become much more attractive. But stay in the game, keep investing regularly, keep investing on a monthly basis, but keep flexing. कभी 3 रुपए डाला, कभी 5 रुपए डाला, कभी 60 डाला, depending upon how the market is or how that specific stock is. And even within that basket of six stocks, one or two may correct heavily. So you can invest more in those on that monthly basis and invest less in others. And you can keep juggling, right? So again, that's down to your judgment and experience. But SIP is a great call. And stopping SIP, again, as Charlie Munger kept saying, never interrupt compounding. That's your SIP, that's your compounding. Invest less or more depending upon how the valuations are, but don't stop.
right, sir? So next question is on Lorus Labs. He's asking, Lorus did 1.4 times asset turnover in 2021-21. 22 and management guiding to reach those levels from current level of zero point 0.8. But now CDMO will contribute more in the sales and easy to achieve 2 times asset turnover. Is it the right assumption? And if so, if rightly so, why management is under guiding or maybe sticking to reaching to levels of 1.4 times?
So maybe management is correcting. It's the law of averages because previously they have over guided. Maybe this time they are under promising and they may over deliver, right? Because I think they have also learned the lesson that let's be very conservative. It's better to stay conservative because investor का जो horizon है वो promoter के horizon से match करे ये जरूरी नहीं है. So investor may be having a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year horizon, whereas promoter may be having 10 year, 20 year, 30 year horizon. They may be building the business for the next generation, whereas investor is building the business for their next holiday or investing for their next holiday. So horizon का भी mismatch होता है ना. And I think 1.4 is conservative. I agree. Currently, Lorus is at 0.8x asset turn or thereabout. So if you look at um, the economics of the business when they touched 1.4, that was sometime around 2021, right? 5 years from here, so let's say 2028 or 2029, the the business mix and the capability and the competence of Lorus will be dramatically different from what it was in 2021. So obviously, if you are having a more niche molecules, higher CDMO element in your overall revenue mix, your asset turn should be better than what they were last time around. That's a no-brainer. I mean, so 1.4 से तो ज्यादा होगा. कितना ज्यादा होगा? That's anybody's guess. So let's wait and watch and see how it all plays out, rather than trying to guess and making a wrong guess. I would rather not guess.
And one part question was also in the first half H1, the EBITDA is somewhere around 14, and the management for the whole financial year 25 has guided conservatively around 20%. So, on that guidance, what is your sense if you would like
So I'm
to
not
take
sure
that
whether that
question?
is a conservative guidance or that's an optimistic guidance. Will H2 be will H2 be better than H1 this fiscal? The answer is yes. Will H2 be significantly better than H1? Again, it depends on how you define significant versus how I define significant. So I think Q3 could be, I don't know, um, a definite improvement in sales from Q1 or Q2. So I think H1 is definitely flat over last H1. So YOY, there is absolutely no gain. So Q3 should be a YOY gain. Q3 should be a sequential gain. So Q2 से better होगा Q3. कितना better होगा वो anybody's guess. But because the costs are already being absorbed in the Q2 numbers, any incremental sale will result in improvement in EBITDA. Um, so that's for sure in Q3. And reading the transcripts and listening to the management's interview, I'm getting a sense that Q4 should be significantly better. Right? So on a blended basis, if you are doing higher EBITDA on a higher base, your overall margins are getting because it's a weighted average, right? So if you are doing lower EBITDA on a lower base, so H1 is a lower base, 1200 crore or thereabout across Q1 and Q2. On a lower base, they have reported lower EBITDA. If they can improve the base, i.e., more sales and a higher EBITDA, then on a weighted average, on an annualized basis, you may still be closer to high teens, if not 20%. That is possible. वो होगा कि नहीं होगा वो तो समय ही बताएगा.
Right, sir. So Biocon, quick question. So Biocon's debt refinancing $1.1 billion dollars. It's biologic generics and insulin opportunity. So it's an example of fragile management and anti-fragile business opportunity. So is it the fair assumption or
No, so I've explained Biocon as a case studies, several different chapters in my book, right? So there are no prizes for guessing. People have read it. I mean, those who have read the book, they know my view, right? And I think poor governance is one thing um, that comes to my mind. You know, if you look at the investor press releases, so for example, look at the June quarter press release that Biocon made. Very recent example where they included one-off into the operating sales to create a, quote unquote, nice looking press release. I mean, that's a very stupid thing to do. I mean, they assume that the shareholders are stupid. We are not. So that's one thing. Their governance and their guidance has been, they've created a mockery, not just last year or the year before, over a very long period of time. So there are question marks around that for sure. Again, if I come to down to the numbers, poor ROC over many years, poor compliance track record. They keep USFDA keeps finding fault in their Malaysia plant and often in some of their Indian plants as well. So again, I think management change होगा नहीं होगा मुझे नहीं पता, but I think incrementally आपको अगर बड़ा पैसा कमाना है तो समथिंग मटेरियल हैज टू चेंज. जेबी फार्मा में बड़ा पैसा कम बनाया क्योंकि मैनेजमेंट चेंज हुआ. अ मटेरियल चेंज इवेंट हैपेंड. सेम फॉर आरपीजी लाइफ. सो यू that would be my. And having said that, I may be sounding very bearish and pessimistic on Biocon. Let me be very honest. I'm invested, and I even added Biocon last year when the price was close to 250, because at that point in time, I thought my मेरे पास खोने को कुछ नहीं है, my downside is limited. And if I'm patient enough for, let's say, 10, 15 years, I don't know, some random event on the upside may kiss me, and I may make, mm, far better than what we have over the last 5, 7 years. Because Biocon ने तो पैसा बना के दिया नहीं ना पिछले 5, 7 साल में. And there are many companies, not just Biocon. I mean, you look at Indoco Remedies, पैसा नहीं बना. You look at Bliss GVS, last 5, 10 years में पैसा कहाँ बना है किसी ने. But then, if I compare Bliss GVS with Biocon, balance sheet देखो, there's a diagonally opposite balance sheet. Bliss GVS is net cash, Biocon is pregnant with cash, pregnant with debt. Whereas Bliss GVS has got no debt. In fact, they've got cash on books. The 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 business risk that Biocon is facing is significantly higher than the business risk that the Bliss GVS is facing, right? The historic high in ROCE that Bliss GVS has reported is significantly better than the historic high in ROCE that Biocon has ever reported in their life cycle. So there are differences uh, in the business. And पैसा बनाना है वो जरूरी है या पैसा बायोकॉन से बनाना है वो जरूरी है, वो आपका कॉल है.
सर ब्लिस जीवीएस पे ये क्वेश्चन है कि फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम दे हैव क्लियर्ड यूएसएफडीए inspection and it's a 40-year-old company. So balance sheet you already talked about. Any major transformation happening in the
हाँ, तो
business
एक
you want to highlight?
वही, if you read the latest annual report, the regulatory approvals have been positive. They have got some niche technologies. I'll let you read the annual report and let you figure it out rather than me spoon feeding. Their 20, 30 year track record is phenomenal. I mean, if again, you may call it market timing. If you bought it somewhere around um, 2004 or 5, or 2002, 3, 4, 5, and from that point to 2015, which was the first peak that they made, it was almost a 200 bagger off the top of my head. So Bliss GVS was adjusted for all the bonus and split. It was less than 1 rupee in 2003, 2004, and the peak was 200, close to. Since 2015, they have not breached that threshold of 200. So there's a very long time correction that has happened. Capability wise and capacity wise, they are much more superior than they were in 2015. So the intrinsic value has increased. So how I treat in these businesses where the hygiene is not a factor. So hygiene is in balance sheet. Balance sheet में risk नहीं है. Once that is taken care of, once that has been taken care of, I look at whether I'm getting paid to wait. And in most cases, so I'm not specific on Bliss GVS. I can take Newland as an example, or I can take Lorus as an example for that matter. The intrinsic value is rising, and I know that it's rising because they're investing more in capacities and capabilities, even Solara for that matter, or Hial for that matter, or any other business. And as long as the intrinsic value is rising, it doesn't matter what the stock is doing. At some point in time, the stock will overshoot the intrinsic value. So Jubilant Pharma as an example. ये वही फार्मोवा है जो 300 रुपए के नीचे था, not so long ago. And आज ये 1200 के ऊपर है. So you are getting paid to wait. It doesn't matter if the stock is not performing, as long as your horizon is long enough, and you wait and wait and wait and wait, because at some point in time the stock price will breach the intrinsic value, and that intrinsic value should be growing at a gradient of 20%, at an angle of 20%. So even if that stock price breaches that intrinsic value after 10 years, you'll make a hell lot of money. From undervaluation, if it goes to overvaluation, it could be a 20 bagger, depending upon where you started and where you bought this stock. And that's how you make a truckload of money. Newland Labs was below book value 5 years back, below book value, where Divi's was already at 15 times price to book or thereabout. So there was a significant delta between the valuation that the much larger company Divi's was commanding versus a minnow like Newland. Whereas if you look at the quality of CDMO and the quality of science that Newland was doing was significantly better than Divi's. The reason DVS was getting a premium was it was because of much larger size, mutual funds and HNI participation. The more liquid and the larger the stock, the better the discounting and the valuation. But the intrinsic value of Newland was significantly higher even in 2019. And that's why people made, 40 bagger, 50 bagger, because you were getting paid to wait. अभी वो ये किसी को नहीं पता था कि न्यूलैंड जो है वो 16,000 का भाव 2024 में आएगा, हो सकता है 2028 में आता, लेकिन 30,000 का आता. So because that intrinsic value is rising, right? So what is the intrinsic value today won't be the intrinsic value in 5 years out. The intrinsic value is increasing. The stock may or may not acknowledge that. But at some point in time, the stock will breach that intrinsic value and you will make a hell lot of money. And that's why Charlie Munger kept saying uh, that big money is in waiting. You wait. So once the hygiene has been taken care of, it's an ethical promoter, it's a competent promoter. The hygiene is not a risk. The risk is in balance sheet. And what is the upstream derivative of balance sheet is the management. Because ultimately, who's creating the balance sheet? It's the management. So once the hygiene is out of the way, you are getting paid to wait. So there is no point, trading 10-20% के लिए कभी stock, because you may not get it back. People who sold Newland when it crossed its previous high of 2021, 2700-2800 का जब हाई उसने क्रॉस किया, someone was exiting ना, वो भाव ही नहीं मिला उनको दोबारा, तो वो 10-20% के चक्कर में एसेट निकल जाता है.
Right. So next question is, can Supria Life Sciences build on its already high margins with larger mix coming from CDMO in the medium term? Okay.
I,
A quote from their con call, one of their customer has moved to asset light model, and can we expect more projects from them?
Again, so medium term is a very subjective term. I don't know what medium term means. I mean, if 39% is or 40% is what the current EBITDA margin of Supria is, and I have been public, I've tweeted this very recently that that's not sustainable. And I think management has also accepted that fact. I think 30% is not a bad margin in any API business. 30% is not a bad margin. 40% is obscene. That may not be sustainable. The reason Supria is today making that 40% is what they also explained, that they are mature products where they have got um, economies of learning, this experience curve, because they have been in that molecule, they have been in that game for very long. They know how to add operational efficiencies. And when they take the same molecule to regulated market, they get a higher price, but their cost is same as before. Their gross margins expand. All of it flows down to the EBITDA, and they make a higher margin. But when they introduce new products, they will be going into the emerging markets first, where the price realization is lower. So overall, the market margins may get diluted. But even if the margins become 30%, as long as the business is adding intrinsic value, capacity, capability, more scientists, doing more R&D, then I'm getting paid to wait, and I don't care. At some point in time, the, the realization would happen. So on a longer term basis, I think nothing has changed. The balance sheet is still net cash. Um, we first discussed Supria Life Sciences when the stock was closer to 225. This was last year in April, May time, right? And stock is almost 3x from those levels. And so, we have made serious amount of money in just a matter of less than 18 months, I would say. And that performance won't be repeated. But for an original investor who entered around 200 or somewhere between 200 and 250, even a 10% stock rise on that entry price of 200 or 250 is a significant jump. So you get paid to wait. But yes, 39-40% margin expectation is completely pointless. I don't think that's sustainable for any company, even Divi's or Suven for that matter, let alone Supria.
So another question is on Hial, sir. So the question is basically how you see Hial FY 28 or 29. if the execution is on the track as the
Again, so
management has been.
yeah, again, same example. You're getting paid to wait. The intrinsic value is increasing in Hycle. We know that for sure. They have added capacities, they have added capability, they have added scientists. They are they are doing the kind of projects that they were not doing 5 years ago. And there is a lot of structural shift happening in the supply chain. So the intrinsic value is increasing in Hycle. Whether the stock will breach that intrinsic value next year or the year after or 5 years, I don't know. But probably I'm getting paid to wait here. And I expect incremental improvement in the business performance on an annualized basis from this point onwards. And I'm not bearish on Hycle. I know there's a lot of negatives and negative chatter and pessimism around Hycle, but so was the case with Newland 2 years ago. Not many were prepared to invest in Newland at $1,000, and many were prepared to invest at 14,000, 15,000, 16,000. That happens. And that has happened across sectors, across businesses. It's not the first time. Price changes perception, sometimes perception changes price. Ultimately, we have to take a business in blocks of 5 years. And I think Hycol would be a much better business 5 years out versus what it is today.
All right. So next question is on view on Jubilant Pharma was radio pharmacy business margin profile. So how could they improve it? And secondly, is asking why is margin in immunotherapy so volatile?
Again, so there is a lot of management change that has happened in Jubilant Pharma in recent times. And radio pharmacy, I'm not sure how many of you track this business closely. They acquired this business few years back, predominantly an East Coast US based business. And every pharmacy is on a different sort of a return profile. Um, some are negative, some are mildly positive, some are extremely positive. So on a blended basis, you get the margins that you get. They have been shutting down some of the loss-making units, and they are also penetrating inwards inside other geographies or states within the US where the margins are arguably better. So I expect over the next 2, 3 years, the radio pharmacy business margin should improve. They have been improving in recent quarters, but I expect, significant improvement to happen as we go along. Um, because it's a conglomerate, and we so in October 2022, I jokingly said ये काफी फैला हुआ business है, right? That welcome movie dialogue, Sanjana Airlines, Sanjana Textile, and I think that's still the case. They've got far too many different divisions. There is a CRDMO, there is generics API business, there is this radio pharmacy business, there is their traditional radio pharma business, which is their best margin business. Operating margins as high as 50%, if not more. So overall, on a blended basis, I think the margins have improved. Uh, are they near their peak potential? Probably the answer is no. I could be wrong there, but I stay invested. I like this business, and I'm hoping that over the next 4 or 5 years, we'll see significant value creation even from here. But again, my average in Jubilant Pharma, for those who don't know, I first invested sometime around September 2013 when this was Jubilant Life Sciences. Price was close to $70. They demerged the business 1:1, so 50% in Ingrevia and 50% in Pharmova. So that $70 investment in 2013 today is 1,200 or whatever the Jubilant Pharmova is today, plus 600-700 of Ingrevia, so close to 2,000. So a significant value has happened. And again, the reason is I was buying it significantly below intrinsic value. And the intrinsic value was increasing. I could see that. Again, it's a judgment call. You improve your judgment over a period of time, because when you make mistakes, that's how you learn, that's how you gain experience, and that's your mistakes make your judgment and experience better. So बिना बिना गलती करे तो कोई सीखेगा नहीं. So you may be reading, several books, you may be listening to these podcasts, you may be reading my tweets, and you would still make those mistakes. When you make those mistakes, then you will learn the lesson and then you will improve. गलती करके ही सीखोगे. गिरोगे, घुटने छिलेंगे. साइकिल चलाना कैसे सीखा था? कैंची चलाते थे, गिरते थे, घुटने छिलते थे, ब्लीडिंग होती थी. वी यूज टू लर्न ना. तो दो चार बार गिरोगे, गिरने से मत डरो. मेक स्मॉल मिस्टेक्स बट ट्राई टू लर्न फ्रॉम योर मिस्टेक्स एंड इम्प्रूव योर जजमेंट.
So Jubilant Ingrevia's execution and management track record view, and they recently announced 300 million contract. Where could they be placed in the value chain with this?
I think they're improving. So ever since this new guy, right, this Deepak Jain, there's a new energy for sure in the organization. They are increasingly getting aggressive in the CDMO space. They cut across pharmaceutical, agrochemicals, and other industries, and as long as they maintain this thrust on CDMO and stick to their core competence, which is pyridine and other chemistries, I don't see any reason why they cannot significantly scale up. But again, proof of pudding is in eating. We'll have to wait and watch for their execution. Um, but yeah, I'm not negative. I mean, I can see that this new guy is definitely adding value.
All right. So next question is, with new partners in India, will the cost of US companies reduce and hence margins improve? Does US pharma demand any kind of attention on those fronts?
I'm not 100% clear on the question. With what? Sorry.
So basically, with the focus going outside China with new partners within India,
Mhm.
will the cost of US companies, maybe US focused pharma companies, reduce and hence
So cost,
their
cost,
margins?
cost is not. So as I said, see, from an innovator perspective, the cost of API is just anywhere between 1 and 3%. Whether you make it in China or you make it in India, the cost will not be a factor for the innovator. The the challenges are what's the capacity. So the Chinese players, they have a much larger capacity compared to India, right? Wuxi alone, off the top of my head, they had close to 28,000 scientists. I mean, 28,000 scientists to India का पूरा listed unlisted space मिला के नहीं होगा. So the scale of China is very different. But if you are making a niche molecule like a car XT as an example in case of Newland, it doesn't matter whether you are making it in India or making it in China, because BMS की cost जो है वो manufacturing पे depend ही नहीं करती. Majority of the cost for the innovator is, as I said, distribution and marketing expenses, the labeling of the product, the connect with the doctor, investing in marketing, sales, distribution. That's where the cost is. So from that perspective, they will not make serious gains by making it in China or lower cost jurisdiction, because वो cost as a percentage is nothing. The reason they are not the reason is difficult to switch is A, because you need to make those filings in the drug master file and all the rest of it, which is time consuming. If the molecule is likely to go off patent before 2030, then there's absolutely no point or benefit in switching away from China. Let it run out of the life cycle, staying with the Chinese company. But for newer initiatives, something is in preclinical or phase one, the drug life cycle itself will be 10 years, which will be beyond 2030. Those kind of initiatives, I think the innovators will definitely look at jurisdictions and partners outside China, because you see, even without biosecure, it's common sense. Why? It's like portfolio diversification. You will not invest all your money in a single stock or a single sector. That's common sense. So same for innovators. Why do you think that the board of Roche or AstraZeneca would be investing their entire pipeline in a single jurisdiction or a single company? They will spread it out. It's portfolio management, simple. With or without biosecure, doesn't matter.
Right. So one perspective is asking, if capacities are underutilized for long time, the maintenance capex might turn out more like paying to wait. Do you agree to this statement?
Come again. What's the question? Maintenance capex as in?
Yeah, if capacities are underutilized for long time,
Uh-huh.
the maintenance capex might turn out to be like paying to wait.
Not sure if I'm getting the question. So if Okay, so let's say Mangalore API as an example, if it's Syngene's example, right? it- they 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 started the land acquisition was sometime around 2013. They disclosed this transaction in the annual report of Biocon as Syngene wasn't listed then, somewhere around 2014. And the plant is not still fully ramped up and commercial despite being USFDA approved recently. I think in the last 12 months they got that USFDA approval. So and the depreciation is happening, right? So a new plant will have higher depreciation, but that doesn't mean that all that depreciation is a good reflection of the maintenance capex, because the actual maintenance of a new plant is significantly lower than the depreciation. So you have to see whether it's what the depreciation number is. A classic example is Piramal Pharma. They they publicly said about the last quarter or the quarter before that their maintenance capex is somewhere closer to 300 crores, whereas their depreciation is much more than 300 crores, which means that majority of their facilities are newer or refurbished, right? So the real thing is the cash inflow and the cash outflow. The accounting depreciation is just a number on the P&L side, and that's giving you an EPS or a net loss or a net positive. So a capacity that was ready for commercial production few years ago and that has not been ramped up is kind of taking its toll on the P&L, and I think that's good news from a negative perception, because the reported EPS will be lower, but then the earnings power is getting better and better, because you know that depreciation is hitting your P&L and that depreciation cannot be rising on that unit, right? So on a unit specific basis, the depreciation will only get better and better. And as the plant starts ramping up, the ROC will go from low single digit to so in case of Newland, what happened? If you look at the reported ROCE of Newland, if you go to screener somewhere around 2018-19, the reported ROCE was low single digit, and the latest reporting ROC is 30%. So from low single digit, you went all the way to 30%. And if you read any book, they will say, only invest in companies with high ROC. अभी आप यहाँ पे जाके 16,000 पे न्यूलैंड खरीद के बैठ लिए, आपका 10 बैगर थोड़े हो जाएगा. So the time to invest is not always when the ROC is all ramped up and high. Again, it's your knowledge of which kind of industry is this, which kind of business is this. Uh, in pharmaceutical, a low ROCE, as long as the management is competent and capable, is a great invitation to invest, and a high ROCE may not be a great time to invest. I'm talking specifically about the manufacturing side of pharmaceutical business, and again, the hygiene has to be all ticked. The management should be competent, capable, and all the rest of it. That assumption is always there, but as long as that assumption is there, a low ROCE may be an invitation to invest, and a high ROCE may not be an invitation to invest.
Right, sir. Sir, you had been very vocal about CDMO since long, and there were a few voices apart from you, if we can count. But again, what has materially changed that everybody, the stalwarts of the market, are talking about the CDMO opportunity? I mean,
डूबते को तिनके का सहारा, maybe that may be because no other sector is performing, so safe haven दिख रहा होगा लोगों को, because it's a discretionary spending नहीं है ना, it's a mandatory spend. Anything linked to the healthcare is more sticky, um, more sustainable. So that could be one reason, because these are all fund managers, so they will look for protecting their capital and growing it, if possible, right? Cyclical, many cyclical sectors are facing, a tough pressure. So we looked at the June quarter numbers, that wasn't great. September quarter numbers, I don't think will be any different from the June quarter. So 6 महीने निकल गया और आपकी earnings growth नहीं आई. And there are many examples, PSU and non-PSU. So in that kind of a context, if a company is reporting mid-teens earnings growth or maybe 10% earnings growth, that's better than reporting negative growth. So that could be one. The other could be changing geopolitics, right? So there is a pressure on Western economies to move away from China. And innovators have also realized that they better not put all their money in one basket, i.e. China. I think it's a combination of factor rather than just one factor. But the valuations and the prices have also improved significantly. ये 2000 हजार रुपए 2000 रुपए वाला न्यूलैंड नहीं रहा ना. And many stocks have run up. So Jubilant Pharma as an example, price was 300 when no one was liking it. Today it's 1200, 4x, and many have started liking it. You would find research reports on Jubilant Pharma. अभी 300 के भाव पे तो कोई research report नहीं थी. So it's always the case when the prices are attractive and when the opportunity is right for acquisition, the research reports will be negative, bearish, or missing. And when it's all ramped up and the music starts, वो जो डांस जब होने लगता है तो सब आ जाते हैं बाराती पार्टी में. ये नॉर्मल है यार. ये इंडस्ट्री में ऐसे ही चलता है, ऐसे ही चलेगा. आपको समझना है. सावधान रहें, सतर्क रहें.
Right, sir. So nutraceuticals, why do you prefer Faircam over something like Fine Organics, and how much
No, I
impact
don't
would
prefer. I don't
ISOs?
prefer anything. I don't prefer any company. I just go by the valuation. Where the valuations are today and where they can be 3, 4, 5 years out. That's my only criteria. I don't love any stock. Um, I am just a slave of what the valuation dynamics are. And I can be very nimble-footed because मेरे को तो 1000 crore ना डालना है ना लगाना है. Right? My per unit or per stock exposure is significantly lower, so I can be more nimble-footed, and I don't need a DVs or 100,000 crore market cap company to make money. I can make money by investing in a 5,000 crore market cap company or maybe a 1,000 crore market cap company. When I invested in Newland, it was you won't believe it was the market cap was 50 crores, 50. This was 2004 March. So again, I'm a slave of valuations and nothing but valuations. And I also need to find out, what can make those valuations improve significantly. That is also important because I may buy a cheap stock that may remain cheap forever because the management is just incompetent. I don't want that. I want a very competent management that is misunderstood. So the market ने न्यूलैंड को मिसअंडरस्टूड किया था ना. मैं तो पब्लिकली बोल भी रहा था. मैं 2 साल पहले भी आप जाके चेक कर लो. इस बेसिस पे बोला है मैंने अगस्त 2022 के सेशन में. I wrote a note in September 16 September 2022 का मेरा नोट था न्यूलैंड पे that market is super bearish and I am super bullish and these are the reasons I am bullish. So I want market to be super pessimistic where I see healthy signs because मुझे valuation वहां पे बहुत अच्छा मिलेगा ना. मुझे 10-20 बैगर बनाना है. मुझे 10-20% में इंटरेस्ट ही नहीं है.
Right, sir. Sir, if you track any sense on the healthcare segment of Shelley engineering plastics, if you
नहीं यार,
have
मैंने
ever
ट्रैक नहीं किया
studied.
यार सर. इसको कभी नहीं किया, ट्रैक किया. सॉरी,
Okay,
पास.
sir. So apart from sir pharma and healthcare, we had many questions today. Broadly market पे अगर 5-10 मिनट कुछ
हाँ,
apart from
ब्रॉडली
these
देखो,
segments.
ब्रॉडली मेरे को चॉपी मार्केट लग रहे हैं फॉर नेक्स्ट सेवरल मंथ्स. And I think I've tweeted this before. So November will be volatile because of US elections. और बेचने वालों को तो बेचने का बहाना चाहिए. Volatility also is also good news for day traders and short term traders, right? Because they want volatility. अगर volatility नहीं होगी तो वो नीचे में लेके ऊपर में बेच नहीं पाएंगे. उनको तो यही करना है, नीचे में लेके ऊपर में बेचना है. फिर से भाव नीचे चाहिए जिससे कि फिर से वो नीचे में लेके ऊपर बेचें. और अगर ये सीसॉ चलता रहेगा, ये साइनोसॉइडल वेव, सो इट्स आइडियल फॉर डे ट्रेडर्स एंड शॉर्ट टर्म इन्वेस्टर्स, राइट? But from a long-term investors, it doesn't matter whether this sinusoidal curve, because as I said, as long as the intrinsic value is growing at a 20-30% elevated angle, even if Sunita gelatin 10 साल कुछ नहीं किया लेकिन जब किया तो सब कुछ दे दिया. So if your horizon is 10 years and as long as you are sitting in the right sort of business, you will make truckloads of money. बट आपको हिलना नहीं है वहां से, आपको आपको बैठे रहना है, पैसा बने या नहीं बने, क्योंकि यू आर गेटिंग पेड टू वेट। अगर आज वो स्टॉक ऑल टाइम हाई पे हिट करेगा तो हो सकता है 200 रुपए का स्टॉक हो। लेट्स टेक अ हाइपोथेटिकल एग्जांपल, स्टॉक इज 100 रुपीज एंड इट्स इंट्रिंसिक वैल्यू टुडे इज 300। हाइपोथेटिकल एग्जांपल, 3 साल बाद इंट्रिंसिक वैल्यू जो है वो 300 से 400 हो गई, और स्टॉक 3 साल बाद 100 से 90 हो गया। Which scenario is better? You're not losing money. So as long as at some point in time, वो condition है, at some point in time, the stock should breach its intrinsic value, and that's how you would make serious amount of money. You may not make that money in a 2 year horizon. You may not even make that money in a 3 year horizon. But at some point in time, you have to, market must agree with your viewpoint. At some point in time, it's difficult to give a time horizon, whether it's 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year, because I've seen often, the wait period is as long as 5-7 years. So I'll give you another example. Praj Industries 2014 में 40 रुपए का भाव था, कोविड में 50 रुपए था, 6 साल के बाद 40 का 50 हुआ। So you may not be right within that 4-5 year horizon, but as long as your capital is patient, and you can see that something is working in that business, the management is investing in the right areas, the management is creating capabilities, the management is adding technologies, the management is adding capacities, 100% you are getting paid to wait. Okay.
Right, sir. So, obviously, matlab, you have covered it pretty well, but again, a few pockets within the market, the choppy market, with a horizon of 3 years apart from pharma, you would like to
I
highlight,
think I
although
think
we
at some,
covered it
yeah,
thoroughly.
apart from pharma, at some point chemicals will turn attractive. Maybe next year, uh, not this year. I don't expect any positive surprises coming from any of the chemical results over the next few quarters. But maybe Q4 onwards, or starting going into next fiscal, chemicals as a space should turn incrementally positive. Consumption, I think discretionary consumption is not that bad. So we've spoken about a company, Eureka Forbes, in previous sessions. Um, that's again, any significant dips, I think Eureka Forbes could be a good candidate for. It's almost a mandatory consumption these days. Health and hygiene, anything related with health and hygiene and pollution, I think is a much more sustainable business. Anything related with consumption doesn't have to be FMCG. There FMCG में hyper competition है. Any non FMCG consumption is a good candidate. IT selectively, I think uh, will will incrementally look better. Um, कुछ कंपनीज ने कुछ ज्यादा ही अच्छा किया, सो आई नेवर एक्सपेक्टेड न्यूजन टू डू एज वेल एज इट हैज। कुछ कंपनीज ने इतना अच्छा नहीं किया, थोड़ा डिसअपॉइंट किया, बट आई थिंक अ गुड कॉम्पिटेंट मैनेजमेंट इन आईटी इंडस्ट्री शुड आल्सो बी अ कैंडिडेट फॉर इन्वेस्टमेंट। एंड डिफेंस में भी मैं उसको रिजेक्ट नहीं करूंगा, डिफेंस को भी मे बी एनी सॉर्ट ऑफ नियर टर्म नीज रिएक्शन कमिंग फ्रॉम bad quarterly numbers. If the stock shows significant correction, then defense is an opportunity, because I think it's structural. कहीं ना कुछ वॉर लड़ाई कुछ ना कुछ होती रहेगी, so defense may be another area that may emerge attractive. अब आपने जाके 20 टाइम्स प्राइस टू सेल्स पे कोचिन शिपयार्ड ले लिया, तो प्रॉब्लम आपकी है। वहां से वो स्टॉक 50% गिर गया तो आप रो रहे हो। So don't act like a crybaby if you don't heed and pay no respect for the valuation. आप अनाप शनाप वैल्यूएशन पे तत्व चिंतन लिया लोगों ने। अभी भी वो बिजनेस सस्ता कहाँ से है? तत्व चिंतन इतना सिग्निफिकेंटली प्राइस टू सेल्स पे तो सस्ता नहीं है। 2021 में आईपीओ में हम सबको बोलते रहे कि ऑल केमिकल आईपीओज आर एक्सपेंसिव, बट पीपल वर इन नो मूड टू लिसन। So be mindful and respectful towards valuations in whatever sector you are taking exposure to. Do management screening very carefully, because ultimately 99% of the thesis is management, nothing but management. एज लॉन्ग एज यू अंडरस्टैंड, मैनेजमेंट को अंडरस्टैंड वैसे ही करना है जैसे आप शादी में लड़की देखने जाते हो ना. So have that mindset कि I will not get a very good perspective in the first meeting and I need to check with my relatives क्योंकि सबने अलग अलग एंगल से देखा होगा. So you need to go round the houses, do a proper due diligence about the management, and as long as you have done your homework on the management and you are not paying a very expensive valuation, you will be absolutely fine over a period of time.
So we talked about Newland when it was no-brainer on all the valuation fronts, which we have discussed in last session. So at present point in time, I mean, no name required, but do we see any such opportunities in any pocket of the market wherein opportunities are available, wherein the companies are available, valuation wise, all parameters are checking or kicking the.
तो अगेन मेरा मेरा होराइजन बहुत छोटा रहता है. आई एम ओनली इंटरेस्टेड इन सीडीएमओ, फार्मास्यूटिकल, हेल्थ केयर, कंजम्पशन रिलेटेड पॉकेट्स, एंड इन दीज पॉकेट्स I either find reasonable valuation or I find even a good value on a 3-year horizon. So I don't see there is any euphoria as far as the valuations are concerned in, especially in healthcare. Even in chemicals, the earnings may not start reviving near term, but if someone has got a 3-year horizon, a lot of chemical companies should start surprising on the upside. So I don't see any reason to be overly worried. The volatility will remain. There will be corrections in November after US elections, probably December could correction may continue in December. The March anyway is a seasonally weak. We know सबको loss book करके वो tax adjustments and so on. So maybe mid March could be another good opportunity to do some shopping. But as long as you understand the business, as long as you understand the management, continue with the SIP. वही जो मैंने बोला, 5 रुपए तो लगाते ही रहो. अगर बहुत महंगा लगे तो 3 रुपए लगाओ, और सस्ता लगे तो 7-8 रुपए लगाओ. अगर बिल्कुल ही क्रैश हो जाए तो 10 का 10 लगा दो on a monthly basis. Over a period of time, you will definitely make serious money.
Great, sir. So I think, sir, all the relevant questions which came to my notice, I have already asked you. But apart from that, if there would be any misses, so surely we
No,
can take next
if there
time.
is any last one or two audience, if someone wants to participate and
Ha,
ask a question,
I
then
would
I can make sure you ask
take.
a sensible question that will help everyone. सिर्फ टिप मत डिस्कस करो, but I'm more than happy to answer 2, 3, 5 questions if anyone has got any sort of specific question. Just come on as a speaker and contribute.
Meanwhile, sir, एक कमेंट में क्वेश्चन है एमी ऑर्गेनिक्स को लेके. प्लीज आस्क अबाउट एमी ऑर्गेनिक्स लेटेस्ट रिजल्ट विच आर शोइंग अ ग्रेट साइन ऑफ improvements in margin and fermions CDMO revenue.
हाँ, तो एमी एमी में मैंने बहुत डिटेल एनालिसिस नहीं करी. उसका रीजन ये है कि एमी इज अ सप्लायर ऑफ वन ऑफ द सीडीएमओज वेयर आई एम हेविली इन्वेस्टेड, तो मैं डबल एक्सपोजर नहीं लेता हूँ. तो द रीजन एमीज नंबर्स हैव इम्प्रूव्ड प्रोबेबली, आई एम नॉट श्योर, प्रोबेबली कुड बी बिकॉज वो N-1 बना रहे हैं ना. वो N-1 का शिपमेंट उस सीडीएमओ के पास जाएगा, तब वो उसको आगे प्रोग्रेस करेगा. सो दैट मे बी गुड न्यूज फॉर दैट सीडीएमओ नंबर्स गोइंग फॉरवर्ड. तो इसलिए मैंने डबल एक्सपोजर नहीं लिया एमी में. कंपनी वैलिडेटेड है बिकॉज मैं जानता हूँ जो सीडीएमओ उनसे माल ले रहा है वो कॉम्पिटेंट है, उन्होंने ड्यू डिलिजेंस करी है. तो इस वजह से मैंने कभी एमी को बहुत ध्यान से देखा नहीं, क्योंकि मैं डबल एक्सपोजर नहीं करता ना कि मैं सप्लायर का मैं जिस स्टॉक में इन्वेस्ट कर रहा हूँ मैं उसका सप्लायर भी ले लूँ, तो फिर मैं ओवरली एक्सपोज हो गया ना. तो उस वजह से मैंने एमी को इतना ध्यान से कभी नहीं देखा. बट मैं उसका रिजल्ट ट्रैक करता हूँ बिकॉज अगर एमी ने अच्छा किया है तो दिस द प्रोबेबिलिटी कि जो मेरी वाली कंपनी है वो भी आगे जाने आने वाले समय में अच्छा करेगी, क्योंकि एमी का माल कहीं तो बिका है.
राइट सर. सर स्पेसिफिक क्वेश्चन नहीं है बट गणेश रेमेडीज पे 5-6 कमेंट्स और डीएम है इन केस बिजनेस व्यू पे एनी कमेंट्स यू
यार
वांट टू
गणेश
मेक.
रेमेडीज को मैंने कभी देखा नहीं, क्योंकि मुझे वैल्यूएशन उसका कभी भी अपीलिंग नहीं लगता. देखो, मैं न्यूलैंड को वन टाइम प्राइस टू सेल्स लेने वाली मेंटेलिटी का आदमी हूँ. तो इसलिए मैंने गणेश रेमेडीज को कभी इतना ध्यान से देखा नहीं, क्योंकि मुझे जो वैल्यूएशन चाहिए, मैं 2 टाइम सेल्स 3 टाइम सेल्स, तो मुझे इसलिए वो सोलारा, हाइकल, लॉरस, न्यूलैंड, मुझे उनमें ज्यादा इंटरेस्ट रहता है।
सर एक शेड्यूल एम करके रिसेंटली आया था कि जो कंपनीज के कंप्लायंसेस वगैरह है वो बेटर हो जाएंगे, तो ये मतलब इज इट समथिंग न्यू और इट हैज बीन देयर इन द
आई
पास्ट
थिंक
और
आई
इसका
थिंक इज
सब्स
ऑन गोइंग है, ये तो ऑन गोइंग है। सी, मोर एंड मोर stringent disclosure norms, they keep becoming stringent, and that's how it should be.
राइट। थोड़ा पेक्यूलियर सा क्वेश्चन है, सो आर देयर एनी पॉकेट्स टू लुक फॉर, आई मीन इन द आईटी ऑफ द लाइक्स ऑफ न्यूजेंस, वैसा कुछ
नहीं यार,
मतलब
उतना
और?
उतना अट्रैक्टिव, क्योंकि न्यूजेंट वाज मिसअंडरस्टूड। 300, 350, 360, 370 का जब स्टॉक था उसका, आईपीओ से कुछ किया नहीं था। न्यूजेन, न्यूलैंड, ये सब मिसअंडरस्टूड थे। दे हैपेंस वंस इन अ ब्लू मून। मेरे 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 इन्वेस्टिंग होराइजन में तो अभी ऐसा कोई आईटी में मुझे नहीं दिख रहा जो मुझे लगे कि नो ब्रेनर है।
राइट सर। So let me see one last question, sir. Speaker request, though I think आ नहीं रहे, maybe any reason or any glitch. So just one, Jagsonpal Pharma has come with first time investor presentation and con call for the first time. So your views on the management and business prospect for next 3 to 5 years.
So you guys, I mean, those who have been following me know my view on Manish Gupta when he was with Sequent, right? So it's one management that I always admire. Super conservative guy, under promise, over delivery, and the call was exceptional in the sense that if you go through that transcript, na, line by line, you will learn a lot about the industry. And you will also learn where the operational efficiencies may come in case of Jagsonpal Pharma. They spoke about their MR productivity improvements and other things. So more than the Jagsonpal Pharma, if you go through that transcript, you will understand the branded generics industry. ये धंधा चलता कैसे है and how the supply chain works. So from that reason alone, you should be reading that transcript. स्टॉक इज ऑलरेडी ऑल टाइम हाई पे पहुंच गया है जैक्सन पाल। अब तो आई विल नॉट बी वेरी श्योर कि आपको इसमें अभी जाके कूद पड़ना चाहिए या नहीं, बट वो ट्रांसक्रिप्ट में आपको इंडस्ट्री नॉलेज मिलेगी।
Right, we got one speaker, sir. Elvish, you can unmute and ask your question. Elvish, you are on mute. Please unmute and ask your question. Okay, maybe some issue. So, sir, we close with one question. We discussed very detailed way of the companies की किस्मत के मारे हैं, नियत के मारे नहीं है. तो any new addition to that segment?
Any new addition to किस्मत के मारे, मेरी, if I could put my hand on one or two, it could be maybe Haikal or Solara, और मे बी कोपरन फॉर दैट मैटर। मुझे नहीं लगता नियत के मारे हैं इनमें से कोई भी। जिस दिन समय अच्छा है, इवन इवन लॉरस, जिस दिन देखो, जिस दिन इस मैनेजमेंट का समय आया ना, अभी लॉरस हेडविंड से गुजर रहा है पिछले 2-3 साल में। जिस दिन इनका समय अच्छा आया, उस दिन बेयर की जो कहते हैं ना, जो रूह कांप जाएगी। सो दे कैन सेंड शिवर्स डाउन द स्पाइन। ये वो वाले मैनेजमेंट है, लॉरस की बात कर रहा हूँ इन पर्टिकुलर। समय के मारे हैं, नियत के मारे नहीं है। दे हैव बीन इन्वेस्टिंग इन कैपेसिटी, दे हैव बीन इन्वेस्टिंग इन कैपेबिलिटी। लॉ ऑफ एवरेजेस सबके साथ होता है, कभी ना कभी इनका बुरा समय हट के अच्छा समय आएगा, और जिस दिन आएगा ना, उस दिन जवाब भी वैसे ही मिलेगा।
Right, sir. Thank you so much, sir. I think we have taken 25, 30 questions, and definitely, although Aditya was busy today, he said he'll be available 10, 12 days down the line. So perhaps you can join us that day also. The remaining questions, maybe we can take that way. Thank you so much for your time, sir. Always a pleasure.
Sure, thank you everyone for listening, and again, a standard disclaimer, none of this recommendation